Well, hello, welcome to another episode of this week's Tim Scott Uncancelled with me, Tim Scott. And it's great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us, whoever you are, wherever you are, and however you're watching. We're very welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us. So the format, as ever, is that we look through the papers so that you don't have to. And we stay away from the front pages. They're often on that evening's news, and often if there's a big story, it'll be the same story on every front page. We look behind the front pages, we go through the papers, and we come up with some interesting stories, some topical stories and themes. And we also try to end on a slightly amusing one, and I think we've got a great one this week. So this week we've got a great guest, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, who I'll be introducing in a minute. This week we've got, is Starmer over? Is it finished for Starmer? We've got not just people leaving the UK, we've got schools leaving the UK. We've got net zero putting up our energy bills thanks to Red Ed Miliband. They didn't put that on his headstone, did they? We've got the aftermath, of course, on the Trump visit. Rafe will have a few words to say about that, of course, being a commentator on it. The Guardian is complaining about the state of free speech. That'll be an interesting story. And after last week's amusing story that 1 minute of intensive activity a day can add years to your life, this year, apparently lots of red wine can help you speak much better French. So we'll see about that in a minute. So, folks, we've had the Trump visit. I think, I'm not a big Starmer fan, but I thought, Rafe will have his own view, of course, but I thought Starmer handled him quite well, actually. I thought the visit went well. It was historically and constitutionally very, very interesting. And we saw much of our history and heritage. And this is one of the things I know Trump loves about us. He is surely the most pro-British, pro-Anglophile US president that we've had for years. His speech was at the Buckingham Palace dinner the other night was really a paean, extolling the glories of Britain. And, we actually we have been a force for good in the world. But also, folks, we've got to look forward. We can't just dwell on our history and heritage, important though that is. So we've got to look forward too. And one constant theme of this program of Tim Scott Uncancelled is, yes, Britain has so much good going for it. We do. But we've also got some really serious, deep-seated problems that need sorting out. And our country at the moment is not in a good place. And the fact that, we are a country that has so much good and so much good about it, I think that makes the state of our country all the more unacceptable and indeed infuriating. But enough from me. Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe is a broadcaster, historian, and senior fellow at the New Culture Forum. Rafe, you're looking as dapper as ever. Welcome to the program.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Tim, and congratulations on your podcast.
Thank you, Rafe. Well, Rafe, you've had a busy week and a busy few days. The other day you were at Windsor Castle. Were you not broadcasting for, was it CBC Canada and GB News?
That's right, yes. So I covered a full day of about 6 hours worth of coverage of the first day of the state visit, a triumphant state visit of President Trump. And it was, I think, we know that President Trump loves superlatives. Everything has to be the biggest, the greatest, the best. Yeah. And I think certainly he will leave thinking that he has had the biggest, the greatest, and the best state visit that we've ever put on in the world's oldest and largest castle, inhabited castle. So by every measure, I think even Keir Starmer can look back for once for a very rare moment as actually having had not a bad week.
Yes, I think so. I think it was actually very much needed by Keir Starmer politically. And, we don't need to go through the catalogue of woes that Starmer has been hit with in recent weeks. But I think it's been a good week for Starmer. It's been a few good days for Starmer. And of course, you're quite right with Trump. I'm glad you agree with me. Not that everybody has to. Contrary views are welcome. But I felt, with Trump, Rafe, everything has to be big and beautiful, doesn't it? Everything's big and beautiful. All his bills going through Congress are big and beautiful. So, yeah, I thought it was a big and beautiful visit.
Well, it's funny, his last visit in 2018 with Her Majesty the Queen, during that state visit, he spoke about that so fondly, even today. That was really one of the highlights of his presidential career. So when you're the most powerful man in the world, it may seem strange that a state visit to the UK would rank so highly, but it does. This is a man who is a deep monarchist, instilled in him through his British, Scottish mother, but also the most Anglophilic president we've ever had. And it's such a contrast with Joe Biden. Joe Biden was deeply Anglophobic because of his Irish connections, even though, of course, the Bidens are actually English, but he always overskips that. In fact, his mother once slept on the floor of a hotel in Ireland when she was told that the Queen had once stayed in the hotel, and she didn't want to risk sleeping in the same bed that the Queen might have occupied. That's the mentality we had with Biden. And I think for Trump, actually, we really have been capitalizing on that. And I think when he said that special isn't a good enough term to describe our relationship, I think for once that actually does apply, because the special relationship ebbs and flows, and there's we can argue whether there really is a special relationship, but with Trump, I think it's different. We know that he has his golf courses. Also, importantly, he was born in 1946. So when he was born and when he grew up, Britain was part of the big three: America, the Soviet Union, and Britain. We were straddling the world stage. And he's the last president who actually has a memory when we really were able to keep our heads and shoulders on the same level as America and Russia. That's something that's very important. And look, Starmer didn't really succeed on Ukraine. He didn't really succeed on Gaza. He was never going to. The president of America is not going to change his mind because of a state visit. But in terms of the 150 billion pounds worth of investment, particularly from tech and AI and so forth, it was undoubtedly a successful visit.
Very, very definitely. And I think, Trump is from that generation that will remember Stalin and Roosevelt and Churchill sitting down together at Yalta in 1945 to sort of decide the post-war order. He's always loved this country. I completely agree with you on Biden and indeed Obama. I wouldn't want to go back further than that. But I always got the impression that those two were not overly fond of us. I hope I'm not being too harsh on that. And I hear that one of his on his wish list is for the Open to be played at his Turnberry golf course, and of course we did invent golf along with many. So I thought it was a triumphant visit, Rafe, and great to have you commentating on it. And just folks, people should know about Rafe. It's great to have him on. And he's even I don't know if anybody's watching the Thursday Murder Club on Netflix with Pierce Brosnan and Sir Ben Kingsley, but Rafe has even been praised and name checked by the great actor Sir Ben Kingsley.
Hello, Rafe Heydel-Mankoo here with a rather marvelous story I thought you would find amusing. This is the charming tale about how my bow ties inspired Sir Ben Kingsley's outfit in the Thursday Murder Club, which is a new film on Netflix which stars Pierce Brosnan, Dame Helen Mirren, Celia Imrie, and of course the brilliant Sir Ben Kingsley. Have a listen to this short 40-second clip from the BBC Radio 2's breakfast show starring Sir Ben Kingsley and the author of the Thursday Murder Club, Richard Osman.
Did you get an insight on the outfits as well? Did you get to help?
I insisted on my bow tie.
Yes.
And Chris Columbus was a little bit nervous about it at first, but when he saw me, he realized it was all of a piece.
Yes.
Because my character is a passionate Anglophile. The bow tie is based on a TV, a podcaster that I admire,
really? Who's that?
Rafe Heydel-Mankoo, a great historian and a wonderful raconteur and a great intelligence.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, well, at least I'll have his bow tie, if not the rest.
Well, you can imagine my reaction upon hearing that. I was absolutely chuffed and am immensely touched.
So, Rafe, great to have you on, and let's go on to the stories that we've got for this week's episode. And so, what we do, folks, is we buy a variety of the newspapers. We try to get a political spread, And our first one is about what's happening with Keir Starmer. Keir Starmer, so-called two-tier, no idea, free gear Keir. Is that a bit harsh, or is it accurate? And what about the charismatic Andy Burnham, current mayor of Manchester? What's up to here? So this story is from the Express. Nandy, Lisa Nandy there, it's obviously would back Burnham in come back to Westminster. And the story says Culture Secretary Lisa Nandy has said she would support Andy Burnham, a potential replacement for Keir Starmer, if the Greater Manchester Mayor wanted to return to Parliament as an MP. That is, of course, the very slight, awkward fly in the ointment. He's not actually an MP, and I don't think number 10 under Starmer would be happy to, or in a hurry to make him one. The Cabinet Minister's comments follow reports that the Manchester Mayor wanted to return, and some Labour MPs would like to ditch the PM. Mr. Burnham, due to appear at Labour's conference soon, is seen as a possible challenger, but would first need to be re-elected as an MP again. I don't know, Rafe, how should Starmer be losing any sleep over Andy Burnham?
I think he should. Well, over Andy Burnham or Wes Streeting, it seems to me at least that it's more likely that we'll see someone like that leading the Labour Party into the next election. I don't think Starmer is going to be in office for the next general election. I think he will be with us beyond Christmas. I mean, many people say that he'll be gone by Christmas. I don't think so. I think oil has been poured over the troubled waters recently. The state visit has helped with that. But it is still extraordinary that a prime minister with the sort of supermajority that he has is in such peril just, a year into his office. And of course, now, as you say, the king over the water, Andy Burnham, the king over the Manchester Canal, he is fighting this war with Starmer as a proxy war over the deputy leadership. With the resignation of Angela Rayner, we now have two proxies fighting on behalf of their respective leaders. We have Lucy Powell, who is the Andy Burnham proxy, and we have Bridget Phillipson, the Education Secretary, who is the Starmer proxy. And that's where we're going to see actually how the chess pieces align and what happens there. And so that's going to be very telling. And of course, it's interesting, of course, and Lisa Nandy has also endorsed Lucy Powell, as interestingly as Ed Miliband. So there's two cabinet ministers who have actually aligned themselves with an opponent to Starmer. Hell hath no fury as a woman scorned. Lucy Powell was recently fired. And so, of course, she's now got her moment to have her own back.
Yes, and apparently I'm hearing she is looking like the favourite over Bridget Phillipson for deputy leader. I mean, interesting that the deputy leader, of course, Starmer has no control over deputy leader. That is entirely decided by the membership and the trade unions and the constituencies. So will the deputy leader have to be deputy prime minister, as Angela Rayner was? An interesting constitutional point. Rafe, you're a bit of a constitutional buff. I mean, he's under no constitutional obligation to appoint Labour deputy leader as deputy PM, is he?
No, not at all. I mean, the role of deputy prime minister is completely. You don't have to have a deputy prime minister. It doesn't have a very great historical history in our constitution. Of course, we now do have a new deputy prime minister. In fact, you could very easily get rid of the role of deputy prime minister. It was always there, and we remember with Prescott and so forth, to give a position to the trade union heart of the party. That is fulfilled with the role of deputy leader. There is no need to have a deputy leader and a deputy prime minister. But yes, so the role of deputy leader is very much the soul of the Labour Party. And of course, there is so much disconnect now between the backbenchers of the Labour Party and number 10 Downing Street that, as Angela Rayner was very well articulating, the great schism within the Labour Party is demonstrated between those two mandates, the mandate of the Prime Minister with the backing of the Parliamentary Party, but also the mandate of the Deputy Leader who represents the Labour Party membership there. It also has to be said, of course, a lot of this is to do with the fact that with the most recent reshuffle, something like 40% of those people who were reshuffled, who were casualties of the reshuffle, were from the north of England. So Andy Burnham is very much a representative of the North. Lisa Nandy represents the North as well.
Yeah.
And so this is very much the North-South divide, as people see an increasingly London-centric cabinet representing the Labour Party.
Yes, Rafe, we'll move on to the next story in a second. But yes, I agree with you. I don't think Starmer will make the next election. Now, will he last longer than Liz Truss's lettuce? I think he will. I don't think it'll all be over by Christmas, to coin a phrase, but I don't see him taking Labour into the next election. Okay, let's thank you for your constitutional expertise there, Rafe. So let's move on to the next story. This one's from the Times, and it's about. I was on GB News, as you do, the other day, commenting about the number of millionaires who are leaving the country. Well, it's not just millionaires leaving the country. Some of the schools are leaving the country. Yes, this story from the Times: leading private school expands, and it's not just them, offering tax-free fees. And this story says a leading private school, Brighton College in this instance, is opening schools in Spain and in Italy to cater for affluent families fleeing the UK and seeking a British education abroad. Brighton College says its schools in Madrid, Rome and Lisbon, well, they're really going for it, aren't they, will open from September 2027 for boys and girls aged 3 to 18, with admissions opening soon. It's also considering a school in Milan. The school wants to tap into the market of rich Europeans and no doubt some Brits as well, who are leaving the UK partly for tax reasons, and the fees will not have to be added to VAT. This isn't the first school that's opened abroad. I mean, there are offshoots of British schools in, Hong Kong and Singapore, but I find this a bit worrying, Rafe. I mean, it's great for British influence abroad, but I find this a bit worrying. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, it's just another symptom of what of the brain drain out of this country. Britain is now the world's leading country for the exodus of millionaires.
Yes.
It was China for a long time, but it is now Britain. The number of Italians in private school has declined by 11%. The number of Spaniards has decreased by 13% recently. And after Moscow has had a 25% reduction in the number of millionaires there, but London is close behind that in terms of who's left. And they've said that apparently 30,000 millionaires have left the country in the last decade or so. Just with about 10,000 or 11,000, I can't remember, in the last year. And that has to worry because that leads to a huge loss in tax take. I think it's equivalent to 1.5 million people leaving the country in terms of average taxpayers, and it does rise to the bigger question of how long we can have this war of attrition. There's a big collapse in the property market in London now, with so many properties going on the market, and more broadly beyond that, it's just another symptom of essentially not just the Labour Party. This started under the Tories. The fall in the value of the pound, for example.
Yeah.
Now, Brighton College is actually the most expensive school in this country. I think it's 60 or 65,000 pounds a year if you're British, over 80,000 if you're a foreigner. But it's actually also the woke. This is a bit of a different tangent, but it's the most woke school in this country too. There's lots of research now showing that private schools produce children who are far more leaning to the left, whereas the state system produces children who are basically much more centrist or centre-right. And so we're actually exporting to Europe and elsewhere the Anglosphere phenomenon of woke, because woke is very much an Anglosphere phenomenon, primarily present in Britain, America, and Canada.
It's almost like they feel guilty about being a private school.
Exactly. But my fear is all of the culture wars that we experience here in Britain and America, places like Italy, you don't find those sorts of things. And we're actually going to be exporting our problems to those countries.
Yes.
If we're going to be educating a new elite in Italy, for example, about things like the trans debate and so forth.
Oh, dear. Yes, I saw some really interesting figures the other day on the voting habits of people broken down by where they went to school. Now, amongst ex-private school pupils, there was a clear lead for Labour, but amongst ex-state school pupils, there was a clear lead for Reform. What's going on here? I think this seems to fit your theory, Rafe.
Yes, well, that's precisely my point. Spending all that money to send your children now to public school in the English context means private school elsewhere. Right. Basically, you're paying to have them indoctrinated. Aristotle once said, "Give me a boy of 7 and I'll show you the man." Well, now it's the point of give me a young person of 21 and I'll show you somebody who's been indoctrinated for their entire life. Especially if they go to one of the Ivy League or the Russell group of universities. The indoctrination is huge. And the rise of left-wing teachers. When I was at university, you had one conservative for every 2 liberals. Now it's 13 to 1. In primary schools and secondary schools, over 90% of teachers now vote for left-wing parties. Much more pronounced, actually, in the ideological development in private schools. That's having an effect. And so the rise of left-wing youth closely mirrors the rise of left-wing teachers, and is very much in evidence in our private schools. And is actually those people who didn't go to university or didn't go to private school tend to reflect the views of people who are 10, 15, 20 years older, which you don't see amongst the privately educated ones.
Yes, I think Labour becoming more and more we're getting off topic slightly, but it's an interesting one. Labour becoming more and more of a middle class party. It's no coincidence that their leader is an Islington lawyer.
It's the party of the middle class, it's the party of the young, and it's the party of ethnic minorities. I mean, that was one of the reasons why you had mass immigration underneath Tony Blair and Peter Mandelson. So the idea was to introduce a new demographic that would ensure that in the decades to come, Labour would have inbuilt majorities. Traditional working classes who voted Labour have always been small c conservative. Boris Johnson had a chance to cement that vote into the Tories. He wasted that vote, and that's now gone over to Reform. So they've lost touch entirely with their traditional.
Yes, they have. Well, yes, very interesting comments there, Rafe. Thank you. Well, yes, we better move on.
The answer, my friend, is blowing in the wind. The answer is blowing in the wind. So here I am, on the latest stage of my GB Energy Tour, and I'm near Mansfield at the Lyndhurst Wind Farm. Now, these turbines behind me provide power for 5,000 homes. They were built in 2010. But here's the bad news. Since 2015 in England, only 3 of these type of wind farms have been built and are up and running. Now, that effective ban introduced by the government has raised people's bills for every family in Britain by £160. And the worst news is this: the new Energy Secretary, Grant Shapps, he says these are an eyesore. Come on, Grant. What are you thinking of? The answer is blowing in the wind.
That's not going to happen. If you look at the last 5 years, household energy debts have tripled. They were about 1.3 billion in 2020. Today, they're over 4 billion pounds. 146 billion pounds every year in lost output. What that means
every year. So over the last 20 years, 3 trillion pounds. This multi-decade energy crisis has been the most ruinous era in British economic history, and we would be so far ahead today had we actually reinvested, had we had the lower energy costs. And it's not just about the economy, but all of our public services, everything else could have been funded so much better had we not had these high energy costs, which of course lowers national output and productivity and dramatically reduces growth. Yeah, Rafe, thank you. I mean, look, even I would say that our climate does seem to be changing and warming, but I wouldn't want to go so far down that route, or too far down that route. And also I'm happy to continue to see us trying to reduce all emissions, not just CO2 emissions. I don't think it's all down to 420 parts per million when the large majority of CO2 is not human generated anyway. But I think my problem is with legally binding net zero by 2050. I'm not sure, Rafe, it's even possible. And even if it was possible, I think the cost is going to be off the charts when the UK doesn't even generate 1% of the world's CO2. Well, we're at 0.8 or something, aren't we?
But that's the key point. Look, I believe climate change is happening. You can have a debate as to how much of that is man-made, how much of that is existing naturally in the environment. But clearly things are happening. You just have to look at the extreme weather, look at the forest fires, but also just look at the rapidity or the how often you're having new heat records broken in Europe every year. It's obvious. You can't deny what's happening. But when we are only contributing to less than 1%, and when you see the effects that that's having on our wider economy, because we have the highest energy rates in Europe, I believe, the harms are clearly outweighing the benefits to us, particularly, of course, when we're promised, oh, yes, it may cost you £100 more on your energy bills, but eventually you're going to see the benefits. Well, if you're a pensioner on a reduced income, you probably won't be alive by the time those benefits are actually there to be seen. Yeah. Meanwhile, the Chinese and the Indians are going, hammer for tongs for creating new coal-powered plants, new drilling, and all the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there is this big push for. I mean, I think let's take wind and solar for example. I mean, they can complement each other in the sense that you'll get more solar in the summer and more wind in the winter, but it's weather dependent, and I think this is what Trump meant. It's weather dependent electricity. And if we want to keep the lights on in a modern economy, we cannot be reliant on weather-dependent electricity. I think nuclear is the way to go. We've held off on nuclear for far too long. Britain was a pioneer. We built and opened the world's first nuclear power station. We then listened far too much to the Luddite Green lobby. We didn't open one for 30 years. Lo and behold, when we finally play catch-up, we've lost the skills. We've forgotten how to do one. We have to go cap in hand to the French, who really have gone for nuclear to their credit. These big new nuclear power stations can't come soon enough, but they're going to cost us an absolute fortune. And it will give us reliable electricity, but expensive. And it's also frustrating to see that Norway, with their sovereign wealth fund, Norway has discovered a big new oil field in the very same North Sea, Rafe, that apparently we're now no longer allowed to explore in.
Yes, and nobody would say that Norway is a sort of a far right government. Obviously they've been divesting themselves of American stocks and stuff in their sovereign wealth fund. Even one of their airlines is stopping flying to America. So if decent progressive Norway is happy to drill in the North Sea, I don't see why we aren't. And look here, so much of this blame rests upon people like Nick Clegg. The short-sightedness. So, this is one of the problems with democracies. The Chinese have these great 10, 15, 20-year plans. And Nick Clegg, you remember years ago, said, there's no point investing in nuclear because they won't come online. I think it was until 2025, 2030 or whatever. We are here now. We could have had these. France shows how we do these things. Look, eventually we are going to have reliable, renewable energy. As technology increases and we progress with our knowledge, I'm sure solar and wind and all these will become much, much better, much more efficient, much more reliable, but we're not at that stage yet. And so until we are, we do need to keep exploiting other resources.
Good stuff. Thank you, Rafe. Well, look, we've got 3 more stories to go, so let's crack on. So our next story is from The Mirror. And it's all about Donald Trump's visit, which we've mentioned, of course, already. Relax, it's all over. US leader behaves himself. Done and dusted. Number 10 relief as Trump has no meltdowns. Trump is predictable for how unpredictable he is. He's almost turning it into a strength or into a good negotiating tactic. And state visit and all these deals that are signed. Some of them for data centers, which will need cheap energy, of course. Whoops, we don't have it. But as we've just discussed, so the story here from The Mirror, holding a press conference alongside erratic Donald Trump, The Mirror, left-leaning, of course, was always going to be fraught with worry for Keir Starmer. But the PM managed to prevent the US president from derailing yesterday's Chequers get-together with a quiet authority that disarmed a man not known for diplomacy. There were still a few minutes that would have had number 10 aides fearing a Trump meltdown as he and Mr. Starmer clashed. I mean, of course, it's great. The special relationship is good. It's big. It's beautiful. But of course, we are. Let's not kid ourselves, folks. We are very much the junior partner. and they disagreed, of course, over Gaza, climate change and immigration. And now, Rafe, you were there at Windsor Castle on Wednesday. This refers to Thursday. I wish I'd filmed it. Trump actually, on his way to Chequers, he flew right over our house. I heard the helicopters coming, recognized from my military days the sound of the Chinook, ran out into the garden, left in such a hurry. I left my phone on the desk, and lo and behold, over our house flew 2 Chinooks, followed by 2 Marine helicopters. Of course, they always have 2. Trump's only in one of them, and another helicopter backed up by a Chinook. I'm really sorry, I didn't manage to. Honestly, 10 seconds and they were gone, flying fast and low. But what did you make of Thursday's events at Chequers, Rafe?
I thought it went as well as you could hope. As well, I mean, obviously, we didn't get any reduction on steel tariffs, although they still are at 25% lower than they are elsewhere. That's obviously been put onto the backbenchers indefinitely. Didn't get much more in terms of the other aspects of the trade deal that we first signed. But who can deny the success in terms of the investment from tech? 150 billion pounds. I think $30 billion of that, 22 billion pounds, has come from Microsoft in an investment. 5 billion from Alphabet, the company that owns Google, invested here. Blackstone, BlackRock, and then at that great state banquet, you had the head of NVIDIA there. So normally at these sorts of state banquets, when it was held previously, you'd have Tom Hanks and celebrities present. But with Trump, obviously, he doesn't have that many friends in Hollywood apart from Sylvester Stallone and some others. So it's much heavier on trade, which, of course, is far more meaningful for Britain in the long run. It's actually, as an aside here, a lot has been made about the fact that this was the first time that a president has come twice on 2 state visits. What people perhaps don't know is that while there've been over 40 presidential visits to the UK since the Second World War, there've only been 3 presidents who've ever had a state visit: George W. Bush, Obama, and Trump. So that there have only been 4 state visits by US presidents, and half of them have gone to President Trump, which is quite remarkable. Yes. And Ronald Reagan addressed Parliament, but that was a presidential visit, not a state visit. So we really did roll out the red carpet for the man. Look, we are the world's 2nd highest ranked soft power, and a huge part of our soft power is the monarchy and what that adds to us. And we saw that in full evidence today. Did it lead to a change on the Gaza? No. Did it lead to a change on Ukraine? No. But certainly elsewhere, in other words, it really did show how closely we are dependent upon each other. But also, I'm reminded of Harold Macmillan when he said to John F. Kennedy, "We are Greece to your Rome." And that speech that Trump gave at the state banquet, much like the one he gave with the Queen at Buckingham Palace, was so strong and wonderful about the Anglo-American alliance and the inheritance that we bequeath to them. And I thought, why is it now, today, in 2025, that it's the Americans who are the best champions of the best of British? In that speech, championing all of our contribution to world civilization, saying that America and Britain have done more for humanity than anybody else, quite rightly. But also, recently, we've had J.D. Vance and others defending British free speech and praising us as the land of liberty, and what a shame it is that we've got to the place we are in. And nobody here in this country seems to be actually able to eloquently elucidate those points like the Americans are.
Sometimes it takes a view from the outside, Rafe. I thought that dinner and Trump's speech at the dinner was fantastic. Of course, the dinner wasn't good enough for opportunistic Ed Davey, leader of the Lib Democrats. And I was hoping his place would be taken by the British politician who knows Trump best, of course, Nigel Farage. But of course, number 10 wasn't going to do Farage, even though they clearly now regard him as the de facto leader of the opposition. I thought the whole thing was an absolute triumph. I mean, as I said in my opening, yes, we've got a great history and heritage, but we've got to look forward too. And I think the special relationship is good. I can't see any US president being given that kind of welcome or saying the same things that he said about us, Rafe, in any other country. Do you think?
No. And what's also fascinating, as you said, I covered this for the Canadian television as well, was a number of foreign media who were in place at Windsor. And if President Trump had gone to Spain or had gone to Germany, you wouldn't have had anywhere near the amount of live coverage taking place. It would have made the news, but the wall-to-wall coverage, it really does show you actually how powerful we remain in terms of soft power on the global stage. The fact that the entire world came to this state visit in a way you wouldn't have seen in any other context, apart from perhaps China.
Yeah, I think Britain has, and the monarchy has, I think, a great convening power to bring people together. You know, clearly we're not a world power, and we haven't been for 50 plus years. I mean, so let's not kid ourselves there. And as I said earlier, we are very much the junior partner. So let's not kid. But you know, we're still a permanent member of the UN Security Council, one of only 5. We're the second power in NATO. The deputy supreme allied commander in Europe is almost always a Brit. We're at the very centre of the Commonwealth. So Britain's still got a place in the world. So, you know, don't write us off. Okay, Rafe, thanks for your comments there. Okay, 2 stories to go. And the next story is from The Guardian. Very interesting after the tragic and horrible shooting of Charlie Kirk. Fears for US free speech as Jimmy Kimmel's show is pulled by network. Now, also very interesting article in the Mail recently by Professor Frank Furedi, which actually I agree with, saying that whilst it's tempting for those of us perhaps on the right to enjoy seeing that some on the left getting a taste of their own medicine when it comes to cancel culture, actually we should steer clear. I kind of tend to agree with that, even though this story is from America. So it says here in The Guardian, Donald Trump celebrated ABC's decision to definitely suspend Jimmy Kimmel's late night show, saying yesterday the comedian was not a talented person who had very bad ratings. Well, Jimmy Kimmel was fired because he had ratings bad and was a gentleman before he commented on Charlie Kirk. Trump told his reporters Jimmy Kimmel Live was suspended indefinitely on Wednesday after the US government put pressure on the Disney-owned broadcast. There's got to be a joke in there somewhere. The Disney-owned broadcast, I was thinking about this earlier, was it a Mickey Mouse show only watched by Dumbos? To crack down on the comedian who had accused Trump's political movement of exploiting the killing of Charlie Kirk. I'm sure you'd want to say something about the aftermath of Charlie Kirk and the kind of reactions to it on both sides of the. I'm sure you'd have a view on that, Rafe.
Yes. So look, I thought Jimmy Kimmel's comment, his jokes were deeply crass and insensitive. They were also factually incorrect. He was essentially lying to the public when he said that the right are desperately trying to portray the killer, the alleged killer, as being far left, when actually he's one of us, he's one of the right. Obviously, that's wrong. There's so much evidence we now have that this person was influenced by far left ideology and pro-trans ideology and so forth. Yeah. And it's serious because many Americans now don't watch the news. They actually get their news from these talk show hosts. And when you are deliberately spouting nonsense, it does need to be checked, because there still is a duty of care on NBC, CBS, and ABC under their statutory basis to actually have to work in the public interest. This wasn't in the public interest. It deserved some sort of censure. But of course, like yourself, I'm deeply worried about this. The problem in America, of course, is they don't have an independent media or public broadcasting like we do to the same degree. It's big corporations that control these channels, these networks. There are big mergers going on, of which the Trump government has the final say. And so, of course, it's actually big businesses what actually ended up pulling out Kimmel's show. I think that's deeply worrying. But more broadly, there is an issue here in the Trump government at the moment, which I think is distressing. You've had Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, saying that they're going to go after people for hate speech. Now, hate speech doesn't exist in America. Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment. And here you have a Trump government very effectively criticizing Britain for its terrible hate speech laws, quite rightly, and all the social media arrests. And now it's undermining its arguments terribly by basically saying that they're going to crack down on hate speech. Look, hate speech is basically any speech that we hate. And if we stop doing this, we're going to give carte blanche to the other side to do just the same. Right. And I find that extremely worrying. particularly, of course, when you understand the degree to which all of our institutions have been compromised and corrupted. So yes, there must be stuff done, stopping funding to universities, to museums and galleries that are clearly anti-American or anti-British. All that sort of stuff I'm in favor of, but not when it comes to these sorts of free speech issues.
Yes, I would agree with you. Certainly, if it's public money, if it's taxpayers' money, then I think there is a legitimate interest there. I completely. I mean, this phrase "hate speech." It's a very dodgy phrase, and I think you're quite right to pick it up.
If I could just say also, sorry, if I could just say also, yes, and we've also had Marco Rubio saying essentially that visas are going to be denied and revoked to anybody who's been celebrating the killing of Charlie Kirk online. Again, I'm a free speech absolutist. As long as you're not inciting people to kill, I think that is quite harsh. And we've also had, for example, also with Trump, that they've criminalized the burning of the American flag. Now, as somebody who defends the right of anyone to burn their property, I've defended the rights of people to burn the Quran, even though I would never do it. I don't think it's a very sensible thing to do. I defend the right of people to burn the Quran. Therefore, people should have the right to burn the flag. Once you start banning one thing, it sets a precedent.
It does. Just to finish off on the story, then, Rafe. Yeah, I mean, like you, I'm a free speech guy. Yes, I'm a Bible believing, committed Christian, but I would defend to the hilt if somebody wants to burn the Bible. Let them burn it. If somebody wants to burn the flag, I mean, I would hate to see it. I would hate to see somebody burning the British flag, as long as it's their flag. If they grab it off somebody else and burn it, that's different. But if it's their flag, whilst I would hate to see it, it would bring tears to my eyes. I would. I did something, but I don't think it should be a criminal offence. And this has come up in America before the Supreme Court, and it has found in favour of flag burning. Just to finish on this, then, I can't say I'm particularly familiar with the Jimmy Kimmel show. The American talk show that you can get in the UK, at least on the Sky package that I've got, is Bill Maher. And I like Bill Maher. I mean, he's great. He's slightly to the left, but he gives both sides a roasting. And he's actually quite humorous as well. So I really like that. Okay, well, let's move on to time marches on. Let's move on to our final story. We do like to try and end on a slightly humorous one. Last week we had a minute a day of frenetic exercise can prolong your life by years. This one's from the Mail, and it says here, "Allo, allo, a bottle of red," presumably that means a bottle of red wine, "can improve your French." So it says here, after a few glasses of sangria, it might suddenly feel like your Spanish is getting better. With the same going for your German after a few beers, or your French following a bottle of red. But experts have revealed that it really does improve your foreign language skills. The University of Bath asked 50 Germans who had recently learned Dutch to take part in a conversation after consuming a low dose of alcohol. I don't know whether they helped them with that or not, or a non-alcoholic beverage. And those who had downed alcohol had a better Dutch pronunciation, suggesting a few drinks may reduce language anxiety and improved fluency. Rafe, what do you like after a few beers? How are your language skills?
Have you heard Dutch? I mean, to a non-Dutch speaker, it sounds like they're slurring their speech anyway. So I'm not surprised that Germans sound more Dutch after a few drinks, actually. So I'm not quite sure how much. I mean, my mother's Polish, and let me tell you, Polish is hard enough and complicated enough to speak when you're sober. It takes a lot of concentration and effort. So I'm not entirely convinced someone will sound better when they're tipsy. Yes.
I think everybody in the party is tipsy, like that great song. I think I've got a smattering of a bit of schoolboy French. I did German at school briefly, which I gather is not hugely different from Polish. I mean, anybody who can master German has my complete respect. It's an absolutely brutal language. Most of the words are about as long as a sentence. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe I should try this sometime. Next time we're in France, I'll have half a bottle of red and see how I go. Okay, well, folks, that's all for today. A big thank you to Rafe Heydel-Mankoo. Rafe, really appreciate you coming on, giving us your historical and constitutional expertise. Folks, thanks for watching. We'll have another show next week. So whoever you are, however you joined us, wherever you are, thank you, folks, again for spending this time with us as we get behind the front pages. And thanks from me, Tim Scott, for joining us for another episode of Tim Scott Uncancelled.